So, well guys, let's talk a little bit about Mulloway. What can I say about Mulloway? Mulloway, in terms, for me, it's like a grouper. It doesn't move on the water column. It doesn't is as fast as amberjack or a snapper. It can be fast, but usually when it's eating or during the night. Usually when it comes, the kind they do their strike is lurking the prey like a grouper. Through on the bottom or a little bit up the bottom, and when he almost at his 3 meters 2 meters distance from that target, he makes the run and hits the whatever it is. I've learned a long time ago that if you want to find a fish, you need to read everything there is to know about that fish. Okay, where he likes to eat, to rest, where are his favorite grounds? If it's is it bottom? Is it rock? Is it mud? Is it a mixture of gravel? Is it a mixture of sand, rock? It's very important for you to understand the fish and to discover all the little parts of that fish in order for you to find those spots specifically that Mulloway like to rest or to mate or to eat. We all know that they like to eat squid, mullet, octopus, all sort of bait fish. And it's also very important for you to know that Mulloway have the tendency on full moon to feed during the night. Why? Because of the light there exists during the night, and that it's very good for them to feed on especially if they're eating squids or some fish. So during the morning, if you catch a Mulloway during that time of the full moon, you need to look at especially if it's on early hours of the day, you need to look at the eye of the Mulloway, and if it's not clean, okay, like if it was blind, you can see the Mulloway was feeding during the night. That's how they change the eyes to adapt the night when they're hunting. Okay, so I think that's a good tip. It's a fish, it's a predator that moves in skulls, okay, small and big skulls. Usually when you find like small or medium size, like 4, 5, 6 kilos, they don't mix up with the 20, 30, 45, 50 kilo, okay? It's totally different skulls of type of weight fish. They don't mix together, okay? Mulloway are like salmon. What I mean by this is that if you discover places where they like to feed, eat or mate, especially to feed or to rest, those places they will come to those places every single year. It can be late or early on that year, but they will come. They work it's like salmon, okay? They come to the same places every year. So it's very good for you to mark those spots and or keep it on your mind where they arrived, because next year sooner or later they will be back there to eat or to rest, okay? Movements that jig can have for Mulloway is the wobbling effect and the leaf effect. All the jigs that go fast to the bottom, hit fast, that we usually use on the high days of current, they're not good for Mulloway, okay? So there's no point in using fast falling jigs to the bottom if you're trying to catch Mulloway. Yes, you can have, for example, you can have some strikes, but usually that almost 90% of the time that happens when we're talking about small Mulloway, like a 3 kilo, 4, 5, 6 kilo Mulloway, and even then it's very hard. So I advise you not to use big size jigs, okay? Even if they have the leaf effect or the wobbling effect, they're not good. I advise you also, like I told before, to forget about the bottom, the fast falling jigs to the bottom. I've found that, well, I catch Mulloway since 1999, and I've tried a lot of things, and I've made a lot of experience, and I've come to a point that I find that they don't like, even for bait fish, okay? Even when they come next to the bait fish, they kind of wait. They're very small. They kind of wait and they wait for the right opportunities. So if you're having a long jig or a smith jig that falls fast to the bottom, you're gonna spread that bait ball fish or even the squids, and you're gonna scare them. And it's very hard. You can strike, but it's very hard for you to they don't like it. It's simple as that. They don't like that kind of fall jig or even that size. What I advise you is to use mid-size jigs and that have the wobbling effect or the leaf effect. Okay, you can choose for example, jigs that are good on the uplift to help you on the current, but they need to have the wobbling effect and the leaf or the leaf effect. And I also advise you to choose small jigs. Okay? You check the current, you check the conditions of the sea. If you can have, for example, it's very good when there are small bait fish or small squids. You can use, it's very easy to catch them with small jigs. I have both these jigs. This works a little bit better on the uplift on the water column. Okay, but they both have the wobbling effect. Well, you're also going to see on the video on those strikes, the Mulloway striking the jig, that I don't move my rod almost. You're gonna see the strike, and you're gonna look at that rod. You're not almost gonna see the tip moving. Why? Because I'm choosing. Sometimes on the high peak and where the sun is high, you know that the activity of the fish, it's very low because of they have the tendency to not to eat so well as on the early hours of the day or on the when it's getting dark. And I found out that using a wobbling jig against the currents, you can have good strikes. You can bring the bait fish next to the jig because the bait fish gets comfortable because you're not making any sudden moves on that jig. So imagine this is the bottom, okay, and this is the jig. What I'm doing is floating the jig and using the waves and on the boat, okay, just to do the uplift slowly on the jig, not working the jig, because this jig has a round sign on the back. Against the current, it makes the jig to do this, so it gives a little movement. That's enough for the Mulloway. Okay, he's gonna come. The bait fish are around the jig. The moment the Mulloway enters the area where the jig and the bait ball is, the bait fish separates themselves, and they're gonna see the jig and they're gonna make the hit. Okay. Now another trick for Mulloway. When you're going to a spot that you already know, and you go and you arrive there and you look at your fish finder or your plotter and you look at the bottom and you don't see skulls of Mulloway, okay, you don't see nothing, you see bait fish, and that's good because you're always expecting to have some activity, some bait fish, some fish wandering around. That's what the Mulloway are going to feed on. So one trick, and it's very important for you to control your drift. Why? Because imagine if you go to that spot, you go there and you search around with the boat and you don't see that Mulloway. One good trick is to use the sound. Okay? I've done spearfishing for 22 years and I know how the sound is important on the water. It spreads like it's amazing. So we use that trick on spearfishing. We do grab the handle of the spear gun and we rub against the bottom. So you can use the same thing with a jig, but you need to control your drift. Why? I'm going to explain to you. About to control the drift, the meaning is if you stop the boat on one place and you drop your jig to the bottom, that you know that specific place is where the Mulloway like to hunt or to rest, the best thing is control the boat, not to move the boat, and to be always on the same place where you're gonna hit the jig. You're gonna use the sound to attract the Mulloway. So you're gonna hit the bottom with the jig, Troof. You lift it up, boom, again, lift it up, boom, again. Okay, 3 times. Then you work the jig. But you don't move the boat. You don't take the boat out of that place. And I'll tell you why. If you move the boat while you're doing this, imagine the Mulloway can be like 100 meters distance from that spot where you are. So if you're dropping the jig to the bottom and making noise, but still drifting with the boat away from that first spot where the sound is coming, you're taking the sound with you. So you're let me pick up another jig. You're hitting the bottom, it's like boom, boom, but you're moving. So the Mulloway, it's 100 meters away. He hears the sound with his sensors all over his body. So he's coming for the sound to check it out what it is. But if you move the boat, the Mulloway is always moving towards the jig. But if you don't stay in the same place, imagine, you move, you make a drift like 100 meters. So you continue to hit the jig on the bottom, okay? And the Mulloway is following you. You go to a certain point that, oh, there's no fish, there's no Mulloway there, there's no point in being here. So you take the jig out, or you go away to a certain point, and you lose that fish that was following the sound. Or if you stay on the same place, imagine, even if you don't want to move to a certain place, you want, let's start the drift on the first point that where we begin. Okay, so you move the boat to this point, you lift the jig, and the Mulloway was halfway. So now the Mulloway is turning back because he starts to hear the sound where you started. Okay, so that's for the Mulloway. Of course, if you're going to continue the drift, the Mulloway probably is going to hit that jig midway. But if you don't move, it's going to take you longer to find that Mulloway. So if you don't move the boat from that specific point and you always hitting the jig there, it's much easier for the Mulloway, whatever it is, to follow the sound and actually come to the jig and then make the strike. Okay, that's a nice trick, trust me. I've caught I don't know how many, but a lot of times I don't see them on the fish finder, but I know it's the conditions are good, everything is good for you to find that fish there. And sometimes it takes me like 5 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, but I have the strike, even if it's a one fish. Of course it's easy, it's normally when that happens is because you have 1 or 2 fish. Another trick has to do with Mulloway are a very scary fish. So the moment if you're talking about a few, I don't know, 10, 15 fish Mulloway, or even a big skull, the moment you've got a hit, imagine if you have someone else on the boat, the moment you got a hit, you got like 20 seconds for another person to get the second strike. If that doesn't happen, the best thing to do, my advice is, take the second jig out of the water. Take everything out of the water except the guy who's having the guy who hooked the Mulloway. When you're targeting Mulloway, have that in mind. Work the jig from the bottom up to 5 meters high and then let it go to the bottom again. Okay, most of the times you'll have like 80%, 85% of the times you'll have hits right on the bottom. The moment the jig touches the bottom, it's where it's where you're gonna have that hit. Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you why we should move the boat in order to protect our leader from the fish and the bottom. Imagine my hand is the boat and this is the fish. You hook the fish vertically, right? But the moment he starts to run, you can check the line, and I'm putting this straight. I'm not counting the water column. So if we're counting the water column, the leader is going to do this. Okay, so what's going to happen? The defense of the Mulloway is going to search all over the bottom for high peak rocks to scrub his body against those rocks in order to break your leader. So he's going to move, and if you don't move, as you can see, the leader is attached to his body. So you can entangle the fish, the scales can damage your leader, and if it goes to the bottom and rub his body against the rocks, you can see that the leader is attached to the body's fish, so it's very easy for him to break. So that's why I advise you to move the boat. When the guy hooks the fish and you're vertically, right? The fish, the moment you need to see, usually they use the current to get away. Okay? Usually they do that. And if you know the terrain, you need to look at your GPS for you to see, and you're supposed to know where the high peaks, where the rocks, where he can go, where you need to force him. And you actually need to know your equipment very, very well, because you'll have to at certain points, if you feel him scrubbing the leader on the rocks or on his body, you'll have to pull up the fish. Okay? There's no, otherwise it will break your leader. So if you move the boat, you'll see that even if he rubs against the rocks, you won't be able to break your leader, because the leader is always in front of the fish. Even if this fish tries to turn around on a high peak or a rock, if you stay ahead of the fish and not be on the same spot, you'll be able to protect your leader. And then, being in front of the fish, this is a big game technique to pull a big fish with a thin PE line. You use the strength of the fish to pull him up. So if you are in front of the fish and the fish uses his force to swim, you just need to give him direction. So if you're ahead of him, you can do that, and you can help that fish to come up easily. But if you're on the back side of the fish, as you can see, it's much harder. And you won't be able to do that. Even if it turns on a rock, if you stay, for example, this place, if it turns on a rock and you don't move your boat, it's going to break that leader. You're going to see that Mulloway are they fight on the bottom. They have ability. Why so many people loses Mulloway, especially big ones? Because Mulloway use their body weight and strength to attach themselves to the bottom, okay, for rest. And on those times, usually like 10, 15, it doesn't matter how long, but it's like a 10, 15 seconds, they do that. After they run and they see, for example, if you stay ahead of the fish and he runs, but he gets to a point that the fish, you see that the fish knows that it makes no point in going on that direction because it's not helping him. So he attaches himself, he stops in the bottom. And it's this time that most people lose the fish, because the Mulloway is just there, it's just resting. And people want to pull that fish off the bottom. And usually it's when the leaders or the main line breaks, of making an effort without having no reason to do that. Okay? The fish, if you always stay ahead of the fish will come up on its own. Okay, you don't need too much strength to pull the fish up, and it's very easy that way. So imagine you're fishing at a 70 or 90 meters depth, and you're using a soft action or a medium action rod, slow pitching rod. What is going to happen is that fish is going to hit the bottom of the jig, and you're going to stretch the line. Because of the water column and the elasticity that the water column, even if you're fishing vertically, that jig, you're going to try to pull up that jig the most as you can, right? We're talking about the first microseconds or seconds that the Mulloway hits that jig and is going to kill its prey. It's still realizing it's going to kill its prey. It doesn't realize that it's hooked, right? So it hits the bottom of the jig and you stretch the line, and because of the elasticity of the rod that you're using on a soft or medium action, he's going to do this. We're talking about big Mulloway. He's going to shake his head, right? Because he's killing its prey. Now, because of the soft tip, you won't be able to stretch the jig higher, so he's gonna take advantage. And the way he's gonna move, what can happen is this: because of the elasticity of the rod and the elasticity on the water column, he's gonna shake that head. And if it doesn't make a good hit on the jig or on the hooks, he's gonna do this. He's gonna shake his head, even if you're trying and the rod is all bent, right? He's going to shake that jig, and he's going to, if it's not a hookup, the jig is going to come out. That's what usually happens on a soft or medium action jigging rod when you're hunting for Mulloway. But if you're using a if you choose to use a fast action rod, what's gonna happen is he's gonna shake that jig, but instead of doing this, right, he's gonna have less angle to move that jig, because the fast action rod will be a little bit stiffer, so you're gonna have more control on pulling that jig and keeping that jig straight until it stops shaking his head. The moment he stops shaking his head and he starts to move, yeah, the hooks are gonna entangle on him. Okay, then he's gonna set the hooks. So, like I was saying on the action of the slow pitching rods, in the case of the Zenek rods, the Ikari FB63-1s, the 63-3, and the 64-5, the three models have different actions on the jig, from slow to fast, depending on the conditions of the water and on the depth. So, in terms of choosing, like I said before, when you're choosing the rod for the Mulloway, and it will depend on the depth you are also, because the shallower the shallow you fish, less elasticity the water column will have on that rod on the line. So if you find Mulloway, or if you have spots that you can find Mulloway on 12 meters, 15, 30, 20, 40, 50, okay, you can use a softer rod, because we'll have more impact because of the less water column that you have there than fishing on 80, 90, 100 meters, where the water column and the elasticity on the line, it's much higher. Okay, so if you find Mulloway on shallow places, yes, I advise you to choose a medium or slow pitching rod, to hunt for Mulloway and to give the right action on that jig. One thing very important: don't try to set the hooks when the fish eats that jig, because it's killing the jig. If you don't stretch the rod at the maximum point, not the maximum, but if you don't stretch the rod to take all the elasticity on the line and water column and on the tip of the rod, it's going to be very easy for him to shake that jig out of his mouth, and he's going to take the jig out of his mouth. Okay? Because Mulloway, they apart from having big mouths and usually they eat their prey by suction, you're gonna see that most of the hits, it's not normal. Usually you won't find them the jig inside his mouth. You're gonna see on his lip, the hooks on his lip, or you're gonna see that the hookups are never too good. It's not like some groupers or amberjack or snapper. They really hit the jig, and they really, you can have real good hookup ratio, but not on Mulloway. Now, I'm going to tell you also a trick that I use, and usually when I have the first Mulloway, the first strike of Mulloway on that, when I arrive at that point, when that spot, and I hit the first Mulloway, okay, usually Mulloway are very scary, so they're gonna scatter all around. And the best thing for you to do is, after you catch that fish, you go to other places for at least an hour, 2-3 hours, okay? Go to other places fishing, and then come back to that first spot. Because there's a 60-70% of the Mulloways that run because they scattered because of the fight of the first Mulloway that he caught. There's a big percentage that they can be there, okay? Feeding or whatever they were doing in the beginning. So, cheers, guys. I hope you keep safe, and I hope you enjoy. Sorry if English is not my first language, but I do my best. Okay, cheers, guys. Thank you so much. Oh, and don't forget subscribe. Okay.